See you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, everybody blames Marcone for everything, man. But anyway, so the FAQ facts right off the top. The next book of the Dresden Files is, I'm working on it, and I'm supposed to turn it in this Christmas, and so if that happens on time, then I reckon you'll see it sometime probably early next spring. So there, now you know that. Because everybody always asks me that like first thing, so I just thought I'm just going to beat you to the punch tonight. But yeah, so new book's out. I hope you guys like it. It's ridiculous. The entire thing, it's the longest book I've ever written. The entire thing got started because I was trying to answer a question to myself of why goggles, and it just got completely out of hand. This is the first book in the series. I've got a contract for 3 of them. I can end it there, or I can end it at 6, or I can end it at 9, depending on how people are liking it. I hope I can do all of it. I'm pretty sure I will, but you gotta take reality into account while you're planning this kind of stuff. So we'll see. So that said, let's just do question and answers, because I feel really awkward trying to do any kind of prepared speech unless it's about writing craft. So. Thank you. Brave volunteer. First question.
Just out of curiosity, Dresden obviously has a hat in the books, or not has a hat in the books, but has them on the books, whereas this one doesn't have a hat on the book, but has one in the book. Was there a certain symmetry to that?
Yeah. The question is, Dresden doesn't wear a hat in the books, but he always has one on the cover, whereas in this book, the main character always wears a hat and would hardly be caught without one, yet doesn't have one on the cover. And what's up with that? So that was a question, and the answer is, poor Chris. I've been giving him such a hard time all this time for Dresden's hat that this cover came in and the character did not have the hat. And I was just like, well played, Chris. I have been truly trolled, and that was masterful. But I at least got him to draw and have him hold the hat under his arm. So we at least got that much. But. So that's what's up with that, So.
Thank you.
No more questions? Okay.
I had a question. I know Dresden is the main character in that book, but since you have 3 or 4 major female characters in this one, what are your thoughts on the fact that you have one?
Well, I mean, okay. For the question was that. It makes sense to have Dresden on the cover all the time because he's the star of the series and so on. In this book, we've got several viewpoint characters throughout the book, and many of them are female. So what's the deal with having one guy on the cover? I actually anticipate they'll probably put a different viewpoint character as the star of each cover, but I don't do that. I'm sorry. I like her too. My take on it is I don't do the covers. Really, they just say. Here's the art. What do you think? You like it, right? Yes, it's great. Okay, good. I'm glad you think that. So. But I imagine we'll have different characters on the covers in the future books, or at least that would be my hope, because some of them will look way more cool. So. Sure. Am I still planning on doing the young adult book with Maggie and Mouse when Maggie goes off to school? Yeah. Is there an HBO show still in the works? No, there's a possible show in the works. It doesn't necessarily belong to HBO or anybody else. In my dream world, it goes to Netflix, but we'll see what happens, or if it happens. So, yes.
First of all, congratulations on your engagement.
Oh, thank you very much. She congrated me on getting engaged, so yeah, she fell for it. So. What's that?
It was a show.
Oh. Yeah.
2 questions. One, when are we going to get some mermaids in Dresden?
Okay.
And 2, how is Nemesis spread from person to person?
Okay, 2 questions are, when are we going to get some mermaids in Dresden? And probably not till the big trilogy at the end, because wizards don't like to go on the ocean, and they don't do it unless they're desperate. 2, when are we going to get how is Nemesis spread from person to person? I'm not going to tell you, because that would make it way too easy. But But anyway, I will tell you that it got to Leia through the dagger. So there, now you know that much. Oh, okay, well then. Oh, you already knew that, so I didn't actually tell you anything? I'm sorry, I was a tease. Wow. I'm awful, I shouldn't do that. Back here. For Cinderspire short stories, at this time, no, not yet. I've still got way too much world to build before I can start spinning off little stories about the place. And much more to do. I mean, there's all kinds of work to do on this book, which I'm very much looking forward to. I mean, I'm almost like, come on, Dresden, get out of the way. I want to get over here and go to this new place where I haven't seen it before. And you know, Dresden's over here, but we still have to do awesome. Yeah, you're right. We do still have to do awesome. Yeah, I'm so sorry about the city, but you know, just stay out of town on Midsummer. You'll be fine. Yeah. Codex Alera short stories. I guess I could. Nobody's ever really asked for them. They call me and say, can you contribute a Dresden story to this anthology? And I'll be like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I mean, as far as that goes, though, I probably need an invitation to say, you know, we want a fantasy short story. I kind of already told the story I wanted to tell with Alera. There's some places I can go back there in the future if I want to, and you know, maybe I'll have to pay off my gambling debts or something, and that'll make it necessary. But for the time being, I've got so many stories I want to tell. I'm going to have to live to be like 128 to tell them all. So all you biomed people out there, get on that biological immortality thing. It's got a lot of promise. You know, we can all live like elves then, which would be really interesting. But yeah.
All those stories that you have to tell, how many hours a day do you write? Are you mostly focused on one series or another? Do you jump between them, or do you get so focused on Dresden or that, or on Cinderspire? That was a cloud of questions. That wasn't even a question as much as it was a, you know. Yes, it was kind of a shelling. Okay, well, one of them was, how many hours a day do I work on writing? And the answer to that is, I usually start sometime between 11 and 1, and then write until the sun comes up, because that's when the magic is over. And then I'll sleep until, you know, noonish, and so on. But as far as what I work on, I'm sorry, 11 p.m. Yeah. No, I've got to work when I know nobody's going to interrupt me, because that just drives me insane. Let's see. One of the other questions was, do I work on Dresden, or do I split my time between various projects and so on? And the answer is, I like to work on one project at a time, because I'm terrible with the multi-tracking thing. So right now I've been forced to be sidetracked, because I got a short story that I forgot to write. So I'm writing the short story, which is Butters' first mission as a knight. It's kind of awesome. He's out training with Michael, and they're doing cardio training, and kind of pulls up and stops. And Michael's like, "What's wrong?" And he's like, "Well, there's this guy over there." "What guy?" "That guy, the bum, asleep on the bench." "What about him?" There's a giant yellow exclamation point floating over his head. "What, you don't see that?" And it kind of starts from there. Butters, Knight of WoW. So I've got to finish that up, and I've got to send off outlines to a couple of graphic novels to Dynamite. So we're gonna have fun. It'll be, one of them is basically Harry Dresden versus the Joker, more or less. Although in this case he's called Puck, because Puck is an awful person. He really is, in the Dresden Files. I mean, he doesn't run around being cool. He's terrible and fun. And then there's another one there where we're gonna go catch up with all the folks who went off to form their feng shui out in California after Blood Rights. There's a problem, and so Lara is hiring Harry to resolve her problem for her, so she doesn't lose her grip on the White Court, and that's the other graphic novel. So we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, so that's and then after I get those two little projects knocked off, and it's back to the rest of this year is back to Peace Talks, and it's Peace Talks, which is really winding up looking like a Royal Rumble of who would win this fight. So that's been fun. but that's kind of how I work. Is I try and get just one project at a time and tear into it till it's over, and then I'm done. Also, I only have to write a certain number of words a day. So if I beat like 4K, I'll let myself stop and go play video games. So. But writing is very much it's a marathon kind of thing for me. There are other people who do it as a sprint. Oh my gosh, Ringo, he'll do like he'll sit down and do like 35,000 words a day until a book is done, and like hardly ever sleep or eat or do anything else. All he does is do that until he passes out, and then he gets up, wakes up, and keeps doing it. He's a madman. Which, don't get me wrong, that's a compliment. But wow, I wish I could do that. That would be so cool. At the back.
So since Bonnie and Bob are both spirits and intellect, is Harry going to allow Bob any role in raising his daughter?
Is Harry going to allow Bob any role in raising the new spirit baby? No, Harry's going to have that dad with shotgun talk with Bob. Really, is what it amounts to. But anyway, but you'll still see more of that in the book. We start off early with Bonnie, so yeah.
In Proven Guilty, you had Harry run off the road by a car. I think it's Proven Guilty, I'm sure they corrected. And it never went back to who ran him off the road. Are you ever going to touch on that?
And the one book where I ran him off the road and it never went off, Harry got run off the road in a car and it never went back to who ran him off the road. Yeah, that's weird, right? Yeah. Over here.
Last time I was at one of these, made a vague reference to like a conspiracy theory you have about the show, but didn't say anything about it, and I can't find it anywhere. You want to tell me about that?
The conspiracy theory about the show?
Yeah.
Okay, you got to understand that I've got no proof behind this, okay? Because if you have proof, it's not a conspiracy theory. And in fact, it makes it a worse conspiracy theory if there's any proof. What you need for a conspiracy theory is pictures and yarn and thumbtacks. That's what you need for a conspiracy theory. All right, so this is my conspiracy theory, okay? Set the Wayback Machine for 2007, and Bonnie Hammer is the president of the Science Fiction Channel. Bonnie Hammer, who does not like science fiction. And they put her in charge of it. After she had, I think she was the one who took, I think it was USA, and beefed up the USA channel to something that was way, way more watched than it had ever been before. And then she wound up, they put her in charge of the Science Fiction Channel, which I can only assume was some kind of exile to corporate Siberia. I kind of assumed that she made enemies, and that was the result. So she's in charge of Science Fiction Channel, and she's given the Science Fiction Channel Ghost Hunters and Extreme Wrestling. Which, don't get me wrong, I like wrestling. I watch it for the writing. But maybe not on the Science Fiction Channel, okay? And so meanwhile, her vice president comes along, and it was a guy named David Howe, and he was the one who was behind bringing the Science Fiction Channel Battlestar Galactica to immediate critical and popular acclaim. So when you're the president of a company that works for somebody else, and your subordinate comes up and does something awesome, that does not necessarily reflect well on you. And certainly not in Hollywood, where kind of the motto is, it's not good enough to succeed, you also have to make sure your friends fail. That's kind of a truism out there. So he gets behind the next project, and his next project is the Dresden Files. And so just about 2 weeks before, and it was coming together pretty well, until about 2 weeks before the show started shooting, and all of a sudden all these changes got made to the internal structure of the show. I suspect it was Bonnie Hammer that was behind it, but I don't know. That's why it's a conspiracy theory. But originally the show was going to be a serial. It was going to cover the events of Stormfront and Full Moon in the first season and kind of interweave the plots, and then have the big showdown would have been extremely crazy because it would have been a wizard, loop guru, dark shadow man all at once. It would have been insane. But 2 weeks before, they said, "Oh, we're going to get this producer from Charmed on, and he's going to be in charge now." And everybody was like, "Yeah, okay." And then the guy from Charmed got on 2 weeks before they started shooting and said, "All right, we're not going to do a serial. We're going to do episodes. Nobody likes a serial." And I was like, are you using the same word? Are you talking about breakfast cereal, maybe? Because people dig cereals, man. But we're going to do episodes. And they told him, but we don't have time to rewrite all these episodes. They're built to be one building after the other, you know, that where they get their punch from. And he's like, it's not a big deal. We'll just change the names of characters and disconnect all the episodes, and we'll do them out of order, and it'll be fine. Okay, I guess you're the boss, so they had to do what the boss said. And I think that is kind of what wound up. There were several things that happened. Plus, he was the boss from Los Angeles when they were filming in Toronto. So you can imagine how well that worked out. I mean, so the guy who had done all the work and had been on the ground doing everything, Robert Wolf, who was the guy that I was backing, who I think was really threw himself into the project as hard as he could. Basically, they took away his authority and gave it to somebody else, and that guy said, "Do ridiculous stuff," and Robert Wolf had to be like, and then go do it. But yeah, lots of bad things would happen, like little things that sandbagged the show. For example, by the time the guy out in California would write changes to a script, he'd turn them in, and he'd turn them in by 9, and that's considered standard in California. But 9 in California is midnight in Toronto. So by the time changes came in at midnight in Toronto, and by the time everybody got called, it was 1 a.m. And then by the time scripts got printed out and were being taken around by exhausted production assistants to people who needed them, it would be 2 in the morning, and they would and suddenly, the guy who went to bed at 10 o'clock would get a call at 2, and he'd hear, "Sorry, Terry, I know you haven't seen your family in 3 weeks, and you're really going to go home for 2 days tomorrow, but we need you on set at 5 a.m. instead." And I mean, it was that kind of thing that happened over and over, and there were lots of little things like that just sandbagged us. So that's where I say conspiracy theory. It would kind of political infighting, I think, is what did that. I don't know if it's true or not, because I have no proof. I do have a bunch of facts and a good theory that hooks them up together of why they would happen that way. But there was a lot of stupid from out in California, and the people in Toronto were laboring mightily to try and make a good show anyway. So.
Thank you.
So with Harry being a nerd who loves movies and sci-fi,
Harry's a nerd.
how has he managed to go this far without making some sort of Zool or Vince Clortho reference to Rashid?
Oh, yeah, you're right. How has he gone this far without making a Zool Vince Clortho reference to Rashid the gatekeeper? Partly it's the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper's really scary. Harry doesn't write that kind of thing in there, but that's part of it. Also, no, I don't know. I haven't got there yet. It hasn't been right. I got to feel it. I got to feel the nerd come on, or it doesn't work. You must feel the nerddom around you. Yes. Are we going to revisit the inmates in Harry's prison and see who some of these people are? Those people are there to be locked up there forever and ever, and the only way you'd ever see who any of them were is if something horrible went wrong.
Nice.
So no, because that would be awful. Yes.
I was wondering, you wrote some short stories with other authors. I was interested to find out whether you're interested in writing or course assignment.
Actually, I've never written a short story with anybody.
Well, the books that have short stories.
Oh well, the books that have short stories, yeah, yeah. I actually edited a book this year. That was I wanted to try something new, so I tried on my editor hat, and I edited a series called Shadowed Souls, which actually has the first. It's a short story of Molly on her first mission as the Winter Lady, and so you get to see what her job is and what her position is within the court, and why it's so important that she does what she does. And it's also her team up with Ramirez. So for those shippers, but I also got to edit all these other people, which was really amazing. And I would sit down and get to work. And I remember at one point I was editing, and I finished up with my critique and sent it off. And then I connected an alias to the person it belonged to. And then I was like, I just told Nora Roberts to cut 10 pages from this short story. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And then Carrie Hughes, who I was working with to do this one, saw that and just laughed and laughed at me. She just laughed. It was a very good story, though. I mean, it just didn't start till page 10, you know. So it was only after I'd hit send that I was like, J.D. Robb, that's Nora Roberts. Oh no. But as far as doing stuff with other people, not so much. I mean, I agreed to write a short story for Correa in his Monster Hunter International universe because I think the janitor at MHI would have a really interesting job. So I want to write that story. And then there's also several of us who are putting together a story about a bad guy who I believe the situation is going to be about a bad guy / problem that goes through multiple realities, and so everybody's characters are interacting with it for a bit. So basically everybody's like, okay, basically each of the authors gets like 10,000 words of the story that we're supposed to handle. So Harry Dresden will be involved with part of it, and then wash his hands of it and walk away shaking his head at the end. You know, I don't even know what's going to happen. He'll probably be in the middle. I'm not even going to figure out how this ends. Darn, you know. But for actually writing with somebody else, I wouldn't do that to anybody I respected as a professional. I'm awful. I mean, I am pouty and childish and controlling and completely immature. So I mean, it'd be like working with it'd be like trying to write music with 5-year-old Mozart. You know, I mean, because I'd be sitting there doing stuff that wouldn't make any sense and ignoring everybody's advice. You know, and why not have a purple elephant in the margin of this? There's no rule that says we can't do that for music, and that's kind of the way I work with folks. Yes?
Coda Solar question. I really enjoyed how you took the synthesis of all the different elements and created the society out of that. Why did it take so long for women's suffrage to occur when you had like Earthcrafters were females who had the physical abilities that arguably were the limitation pre-industrial revolution? Okay,
why did it take so long in the era for women's suffrage to occur when you had all this different kind of fury crafting assigned to different females, or that different females had? Why did suffrage take so long when you didn't have you didn't have an industrial revolution to kind of fuel it? Part of it was that Illyrian culture for a long time before the book started was, after the Romans got there, they looked around, they saw a world full of various forms of sentient life, and so they did what Romans did and started conquering it. And in this case, more or less killing it. And after a while, it got to the point where the only thing that was keeping them alive was their fury crafting, and they were basically more or less, their society was one giant Kali death cult / Spartan / city of Sparta. And if you were a woman in that culture, your job was to make more soldiers and more women who could make soldiers, and that was because that's what they had to have to survive. I mean, they had an evolutionary drive that was going on in that sort of situation because they had life or death all the time, and that's all they did. So basically, it was death world for a long time, and they brought it on themselves. But Rome kind of did that. And then for a while things sort of settled out, but these gender roles were still very, very specific and still very, very strong and holding on very strongly. And the powerful fury crafting was really not present in a whole ton of people. It was there in some people, but not a whole lot. And even if you were a woman who had a certain amount of earth crafting, it would be frowned upon for people to be teaching you here's how to go be super strong. You would be using other aspects of earth crafting to do things wherever you were. So there was a huge cultural reinforcement for that, and the way the magic of the world worked was all. I mean, that was also biased of how that was perceived and used. And that went on for a long, long time because they had a very static society because they weren't developing technology and they weren't really making a lot of innovations with Furycraft. So I mean, it was much like medieval Europe where things just didn't advance very quickly, and so societies as a whole looked very similar from one century to the next in many ways. And then it started happening in these books because I had gotten things set up at first, and I realized, wait a minute, it shouldn't really be working like that when I've got all these powerful female crafters who are actually doing things. That was when it started to change. But even then, the ones who were really talking about suffrage were all the lords or slash ladies who had all this power and they could make you pay attention to them. You could tell. Oh gosh, now I forgot her name. Lord and Lady, Placida. You could tell Aria Placida to go to the kitchen and make you a sandwich, and after you woke up in the burn ward, that means she could enforce whatever she wanted on just about anyone, and she wasn't afraid of anybody. But not everybody with Aria's personality was also born with Aria's power, and that makes it a completely different thing. That's really what would have held the Roman Legion or the Roman Empire together, was if power could have resided with the people with the right bloodlines. That would have held Rome together a lot better. And so for Alera, it was all bound up. It was intricately bound up in the same thing, because the powerful people were the ones that had the powerful crafting. That's what makes you a noble. It's a real good place to stay static. That's a real good way to keep things exactly the way they are.
Was the Pokemon bet, is that real?
Was the Pokemon bet story real? Yeah. Yeah, here at the back.
What's the difference between wizards and muggles that allows wizards to use magic? And if you go into more depth about how thorn manacles
About how what?
thorn manacles work.
Okay. The difference between wizards and muggles in the Dresden Files, and I assume you mean the Dresden Files. First of all, you've got to be born with a certain amount of talent to be able to touch magic at all. Sometimes that talent is greater and sometimes it's lesser, but you've got to have one particular gene flips the switch that says yes, weird. Once you've got that, then you've got to be in a position where you can develop that talent, and where you've got to be in a position where you have the intelligence and the focus and the drive to make something of it. It's just like any other talent, actually. Some people are born with a really great genetic setup to play basketball. That doesn't necessarily make them Michael Jordan, because not only do they have to have the gift, they also have to be in the situation. Because if you were born with the awesome basketball gene spread and you happen to be born Inuit, probably that is not going to be. You're not going to get a chance to express that. You're not going to get a chance to work on it. Yeah, I mean, I always built magic in the Dresden Files as something that was a talent like any other. You're born with it, but you could be born with a certain amount of it, but that doesn't make you a wizard without a lot of hard work as well. Conversely, you can be born without a really awesome spread of talent, and yet if you work hard enough, you can really make something of yourself. And if you dedicate yourself to it, you can really make something of yourself. So that's kind of the difference. There's most people can use at least a little magic. Most people could probably be dangerous in the Dresden Files world if they had enough training and worked on it for years and years and years. But there's only a few who are really born ready to go to the NBA draft. And those people, that's who you see who's on the White Council was those people who were born with that and then who developed to do well. As far as how the thorn manacles work, do I explain that to you? Yeah, it won't hurt anything. Why not? Essentially, what it does is when the wizards are drawing the magic in, the thorn manacles divert it to somewhere else. Wizards kind of have to give a little bit of energy from inside themselves, but mostly that's to pull it in from the outside. And the thorn manacles take that and just go, nope, we're shunting it out into the never never, and you don't get to use it. So that's how they work.
So if a muggle were to draw in, so the thorn manacles would still hurt them?
If the muggle were to what?
Try and draw in magic.
Probably not a whole lot. I mean, they would hurt because they're like nails. They would hurt, but they couldn't really bring a lot of magic in. I mean, the pain is just a result of the pain that happens is just a result of the energy that's going by and going elsewhere. It's inefficiency of transfer. If you want to put it in engineering terms, that's really nerdy, so I won't do that. Right here.
Other than getting paid, why do you write?
Other than getting paid, why do I write? Because I never have to wear a tie. and I can go to work in my pajamas. I'm basically my own boss. And there's like zero security in the job because you guys could decide tomorrow, no, we're not going to read your stuff anymore. You suck. And then what do I do? Nothing. But all that said, the freedom of it is more important to me than anything else. I can do this job. I can go anywhere. I got engaged. It's like, oh, you know what? I can go move up to live in the same state as my fiance, and that doesn't affect my job at all because I just take my laptop with me and keep going. So, also, I would probably lose my mind if I didn't. So, most writers that I know don't go, you know how I want to make a living? I want to bank up for 10 things and tell giant complicated lies and then get people to pay me money for it. Most of them don't. Most of them are just like, I've got to write this story or I'm going to lose my mind. And then they're like, well, as long as I'm avoiding, staying sane anyway, maybe I could be even more sane and make a living at this because I kind of enjoy it. So, yes, behind him.